Is elbows up over for Canada? Despite all the rhetoric from Mark Carney and the Liberals, a new report shows that Canada has effectively eliminated tariffs on most U.S. goods. Joining me today to talk where Canada-U.S. relations stand is Sam Cooper. He's the founder of TheBureau.news and the best-selling author of Willful Blindness. Sam, I know it's a holiday in Canada, so I appreciate you joining me today.
Oh, it's great to be back, Daniel.
Well, look, we're confused here in terms of where relations stand and tariffs stand. And just to give some background here, Oxford Economics, a global advisory firm, looked into the matter and found tariffs are nullified by exemptions and suspensions to effectively mean the tariffs are either gone or near zero in most cases. We even saw Pierre Poilievre tweeting about it. Canada's finance minister was quick to come out and say the government kept 25% tariffs on tens of billions of dollars in US goods, disputing this report from the research firm that suggested it had paused the vast majority of those levies. So, your interpretation, who do we believe? Are the tariffs there or not?
Well, that's the trillion-dollar question. It's hard to know. I would, if I have to put up the words of the Liberal Party against Oxford, I believe Bloomberg also reported that it looked like
Yes.
Tariffs were quietly withdrawn. Look, even before the election, we had the Eurasia Group of Ian Bremer, who I think is very close to Mark Carney himself, came out with a note saying that the Liberals would quickly go to ground after the election. And so you're right. It was completely different than the whole elbows up narrative. I have said very openly, I think that this is a historic gaslighting election in which a big segment of the Canadian population was made to fear, the rhetoric from Donald Trump, who certainly played it up. And then there was horse trading going on behind the scenes. So I think what the best we can do is say that the tariffs are pretty much withdrawn and the ball is now within Canada's court to respond to that fentanyl tariff issue, which is real and which is a real concern. But I would end my answer by saying, look, I'm on the record by now. I know I've made some people in Canada, Ottawa, and the Liberal Party angry. I just don't think, look, they can't be trusted. They've been a decade full of scandal, and there's no reason they should have been trusted in this past election. So I wouldn't trust them on the tariff issue.
Well, you definitely got their attention because they are trying to stop you. I want to get back to fentanyl, but first, because it's been a while we spoke, I thought of you when I watched that whole Carney Trump exchange. As a Canadian living in the US, Sam, I thought it was really interesting when I spoke to my friends back home, mostly Toronto, Montreal, who said to me, "Wow, did you see how like Carney gave it to Trump?" And the headlines were, Carney stood up to Trump. And I'm thinking, wait, did we watch the same press conference? Did we watch the same exchange? Because what I saw on my feed was Carney just sitting in silence and Trump controlling the whole conversation. So,
Absolutely.
your interpretation, because I'm like, did we watch the same thing?
I I'm shocked that there's people that would have that point of view, and what that suggests to me is that any honest analyst would look at that and say Carney went down there. He played it smart. You can't go down, as I say, into the lion's den and pull a Zelensky because it's not going to end well. Very obviously, President Trump has the power there. And look, Carney did a pretty good job, I would say, of placating President Trump's ego, which is important. But look, Canadians are continuing to be gaslit. If they're saying that Carney really gave it to Trump, then these are the same people that believed in the fake elbows up narrative. And I think, that just points to a problem, frankly speaking, with Canadian media who continue to feed basic falsehoods, I think, to a lot of the public.
I really wanted to bring you on because so much of what you have been writing about and warning about has come full circle here with Kash Patel, FBI Director Kash Patel's latest warning. I'm just going to read you a quote. He is not happy with Canada. So even though maybe Trump is warming up to Carney, Kash Patel's not happy. He says, quote, and this was in an interview with Maria Bartiromo on Fox, he says, "I don't care about getting into this debate of making someone the 51st state or not. They are our partner in the North, and say what you want about Mexico, but they helped us seal the southern border." So he's happy with Mexico, but says Canada is still a big source of concern when it comes to fentanyl coming into the US. He is not happy with Canada.
Absolutely. And I know you had a discussion recently with an expert that pointed to that lab in British Columbia, the biggest
Yes.
known super lab in history now. That's in Falkland. Danielle, I reported within the past couple of weeks that my sources indicated that there are Mexican cartels, sanctioned Chinese precursor suppliers, and Iranian threat networks connected to that lab. So, as you know, I'm the leader on this file in North America. Look, I reported this is a Chinese Communist Party, Mexican cartel, and Iranian terror network threat in Canada. And this is exactly what Mr. Patel came out and said. So, again, I'll call it 100% confirmation of the explosive stories I've been breaking over the past few months. There was another one I broke in Toronto. You remember the horrific shooting on Danforth in 2018?
Yes.
It was denied that there were terror links. I broke a story within the past 2 weeks of a high-level former DEA Special Operations Division leader saying, look, we didn't believe Canada that there were no terror links. The US government found intelligence indicating threat networks in Pakistan. There were concerns that it could have been linked to the shooter, was a property where 40 kilograms of carfentanil was seized. Some in the US government had concerns this could be linked to a weapon of mass destruction. And the short part of the answer and story is the US government asked to have a few grams of that seizure. They wanted to know, did it connect to any of their seizures on the near Atlanta or terror networks, and the RCMP shut them down. So I've been reporting over and over again that the US government is very frustrated. They believe at a political level in Ottawa is not cooperating on these crucial investigations. And I believe that's what we heard again from Kash Patel. And let me just frame it. He said the Chinese Communist Party is using Canada together with Mexican cartels and Iranian networks to threaten the US.
I mean, he just came out and said it. So the question is, what is Trump going to do with that information now?
You know, that's where the confusion comes in, because he did appear to be very friendly in a way to Mark Carney's election chances. So what's going on behind the scenes? And as you said, you know, there seemed to be a détente in Washington, even though Prime Minister Carney was playing the meek party there. You know, there continues to be a level of denialism. I know in Ottawa that Canada really is a problem for the Chinese Communist Party, using Canada as a Western Hemisphere base of operations and our fentanyl vulnerabilities. So look, I believe that the FBI director, Kash Patel, is coming out and saying what I've been hearing from my high-level US sources and what is behind that Washington White House intelligence. So now we get into the nitty-gritty of real negotiations over tariffs. You know, Ottawa can pull back, and I believe they have pulled back retaliatory tariffs. But if they don't come up with a real plan to crack down on Chinese organized crime and cartels set up in Toronto, Vancouver, Quebec, then Canada, as I and Mark Cahotis told you like months ago, we're in for a world of hurt in Canada if we don't take the fentanyl and Chinese Communist Party threat seriously in Canada. And I don't see that we are taking it seriously so far.
Yeah, and Kash Patel is saying it. He's telling the world, basically. But again, yeah, something is not sitting right. I just want to bring up one point. I had George Friedman on, noted historian. He's been on Tucker Carlson. He agrees that Canada, well, he said his quote, is a strange place. So he's not saying, you know, it's like the safe, happy playground. But he did say this. I wanted to bring up his counter argument. He said if there was, you know, if Canada was truly compromised by China, the US would fully know what's going on because the intelligence agencies, the US intelligence agency and the Canadian intelligence agency, are basically joined at the hip and working together, and they would know. Now, taking it a step further, Kash Patel is coming out and saying it, but I just want to know, is that correct? Like, how close are US intelligence with Canadian intelligence?
Here's the issue. A few points. You remember that Peter Navarro came out months ago. The story was broken by Financial Times that he was advising Canada be pulled out of that Five Eyes alliance.
Yes.
Again, specifically because of the Chinese Communist Party infiltration. And this is what is such a bombshell in Kash Patel's announcement. He has come out publicly and said, essentially, what I've been hearing and reporting exclusively from my US and Canadian sources, that the CIA, FBI, they've been very diplomatic. Remember, these are quiet intelligence agencies. They don't go public until they're essentially politically allowed to. And so the facts are here that they're this is the real story. Washington has been quiet and diplomatic about their growing concerns over the past decade that Canada has a deep vulnerability to the Chinese Communist Party. And now it's come to the surface, as I've been saying for a few months now.
Bigger picture here. Look, it's 1 month past the election. We all obviously, as Canadians, wish Carney well and want him to do well for the good of country, Sam. But the truth of the matter is, Canada is still very much a divided country. There's a lot of unhappy Canadians. I want to get your sentiment check and how serious we should be taking this threat of separation from Alberta.
I do think we should be taking it very seriously. And the election that just occurred, what the news that has come out since, that is that Prime Minister Carney had a private call with President Trump during the campaign. And this is shocking news. We now know that Prime Minister Carney was saying, you're a transformative president. I look forward to working with you, but I'm going to be running a hard campaign against you. I'm going to be taking shots at you. And so essentially there was kind of a deal behind closed doors. And again, a half or more of Canada's population, I think, now is in the position where you've essentially been lied to during the campaign that Prime Minister Carney was going to be the tough guy, and he wasn't. So that has only triggered Alberta more, I believe. And will they get the numbers to vote to separate? I don't know, but they're getting pushed closer to it. And you're right. I do think that a lot of Canadians are forgiving people. They do want Prime Minister Carney to do well, but I believe a growing segment of the population is starting to see, hints that essentially, as I say, they're being gaslit, they're being lied to, and that can only make the population more frustrated. And I'll add this: another big story that came out during the election was our Privy Council office put out a report saying that a dystopian future for Canada, where the people that do well, pay their taxes, aren't getting ahead. They're falling behind. Young people can't afford to live here. And Canada risks being hollowed out by people that will, like you, as an early successful person, and some others, you might say you might do a little bit better in another country. And I think that's where we are in Canada right now.
I'm also curious to get your thoughts on his cabinet shakeup. Yes, we see new faces, but did you find it interesting that he kept polarizing figures that a lot of Canadians could not stomach, such as Freeland and Joly?
The former, was he an environment minister, Guilbeault?
Right.
He would be the most polarizing for Alberta, back to your last question. And I've seen astute political commentators say some of these people, they're failing up, and especially that individual with his position that is, extremely polarizing to Alberta. What has he really done to succeed in cabinet? And yet he's still there. And this is where I bring back my argument. Probably some powerful industrialists in Montreal and Quebec City want him there, and that's why he's there for Prime Minister Carney. I would add, we talked before. One of your listeners noticed that I had mentioned Gregor Robertson in Vancouver. Remember, this is the Vancouver mayor that presided over a decade where housing just ran further and further out of reach of anyone that works for a living in Vancouver. Who is the new housing minister on that affordability file? Gregor Robertson. And already he's put his foot in hot water, being asked, would you support if those home prices came down so that young people can get into the market? And he essentially said no. And so I do think this is pointing to the fact that not only are we geographically polarized, we're increasingly polarized by that baby boomer generation that's done very well in the housing market, and the young people that have done horribly and are getting increasingly frustrated.
But we also know, like, isn't Freeland's child like godparent Carney, or there's some relation there. But the point is that they're just so cozy with each other and just keep carving out positions for each other.
As someone
Freeland,
said,
just the worst finance minister in the Canadian history.
And obviously not liked by President Trump. But, you point to something very interesting. If you'll recall that Justin Trudeau was still in power, and then Miss Freeland was asked to put forward a budget that she didn't want to do. And then something very strange happens behind the scenes where Justin Trudeau believes she's going to step out and Mark Carney is going to step in. And it looks like something tricky might have happened between Freeland and Carney in that sort of maneuvering. Justin Trudeau appeared, confused and betrayed. And what do you know? We now have a Prime Minister Carney so I think there's more stories to be in terms of the horse trading that might have happened for people on let's just call it a very interesting shuffle of the cabinet.
Well, and speaking of budget, we're now going to have to wait till the fall to get some sort of clarity on Canada's budget. So there's that.
Transparency would be the word I would use on that one.
Transparency. Thank you, Sam. Last point, just because I know it's a moot point now, it doesn't matter whether he did it or did not, but I did think it was interesting. Joe Rogan came out and said Poilievre's people said no to doing an interview with him. Like I said, I get it's a moot point now, it doesn't matter. He lost. But do you think he should have done it?
That's one of those ones where I've never wanted to be a political staffer, but that would have been a very difficult debate because, look, they could have, by doing that, obviously hindsight is 2020, you could energize that youth base even more, I believe. Those people that can't afford a home, the youth base, as has skewed a little bit more conservative because they're very distrustful of the sort of narratives of the past decade in both countries. And so, in hindsight, it probably would have been a good idea. But at the same time, as I say, we had such a gaslighting campaign where these seniors in Canada are now afraid to travel to the United States.
Yes.
They think, right? They think tanks are going to be rolling in. And as I say, the gaslighting going on. So if Poilievre would have gone on Rogan, that would have just given the Liberal war room a lot more ammunition to say he's Donald Trump Jr.
Or I can't tell you the number of questions I get because I cross the Canada-U.S. border so often, Sam. Is your cell phone seized? Is it true that when you go back into the States, they're, I don't know, asking you a zillion more questions? And of course, I just don't know what to say. And maybe people are having really unfortunate, interactions at the border. But I think to your point, a lot of it is just, propaganda that's being created. So
absolutely, I think. Yeah, there've probably been a few things with the heightened tensions, but
for sure.
I'm quite sure that the same people, the same media that have said Mark Carney really gave it to Donald Trump in that meeting are the same ones pumping up those stories that do not travel to the United States. You're going to get, a secondary. You're going to get searched.
All right. I'll let you get to enjoying your holiday today. I always appreciate you. I appreciate the work you do. I know so much of my audience is so grateful for you, Sam Cooper. Come back soon.
I'm going to be there every time. I really enjoy talking with you.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling we're going to have no shortage of content. So Sam Cooper, everyone, get his book, Willful Blindness, and of course, subscribe to TheBureau.news, TheBureau.news. Sam's doing great work there. And of course, subscribe to our channel, DanielaCambone.com, and press subscribe on their YouTube channel. And we will see you soon. Thanks for watching. Hi, everyone. If you're starting to question the system and want to protect what you have earned, you will want to download our free Gold and Silver Protection Guide. It's a clear, easy to follow resource that explains why gold and silver have stood the test of time and how they can help you build real financial security even as the dollar weakens. You'll learn about which metals to consider and the plan that best suits your needs, not Wall Street's. So click the link or scan the QR code to get started today. You're not going to regret it.